Hello. I thought today I'd take a little look at the Greek crisis and try and figure out, or give my reaction really, but my reaction is to try and figure out what is the best solution for them. Should they take more bailouts? Should they leave the euro? Should they bite the bullet of austerity? That's what I'm thinking about. Who's right? Are the Greeks right when they say the Europeans and others should write off their debts and let their economy recover? Or are the banksters right when they say you should pay back what you borrowed and stop messing about? Well, let's look at the situation. I've made some notes on stuff I've been reading about on the internet. There's plenty of info out there. But basically the Greek government and the Greek people have been overspending for years and years, decades even. They've been borrowing. When they joined the euro, it was like a gravy train for them. Suddenly they had a strongish currency, and they were all buying expensive German cars with loans. So private debt, that is individual people's debt, is high. But also it turns out the government debt is really high as well, because in Greece, if you are a responsible politician, you will not get elected. And for this reason, I don't think we can just blame the Greek politicians. We have to blame the Greek electorate as well, if anybody's to be blamed. I suppose they are to be. Just to give you an idea, I've been looking at how the situation was back in 2010, when the crisis sort of had been in place for a couple of years. Public sector wages, that's government workers of all sorts really, their wages had doubled over 10 years. That's disregarding inflation. Over and above inflation, their wages had doubled. At the time, for instance, the average wage of a railway worker was 65,000 euros a year. That's about the same as dollars. $65,000, 65,000 euros a year. £45,000, something like that. That's quite a lot of money, right? There are other workers getting less and others getting more. But basically, it seems that when the Greeks joined the euro, they took it as a bonanza. Lots and lots of cheap money. They could now borrow money at 5% instead of, as it had been previously, 15%. And so they did. Okay, never mind that actually it was still the same country. The lenders have a lot to answer for here, because they were lending based on this 5% interest rate. And anybody who did more than a couple of minutes of homework would have realised that the Greeks had massaged the figures, both to get into the euro and to get these low interest rates. It was obvious, and anybody in the business who was at all interested in lending to the Greeks must have known. But they thought, well, it'll be backed by the Germans. They'll bail them out if necessary, which is what's happening at the moment. So for that reason, the lenders, I think, should take a haircut. They should have known better. In fact, they did know better. So it's their fault too. But it wasn't just public sector wages, it's the whole way the Greek system is run. Their public sector is grossly inefficient. It's run through nepotism, and who you get appointed because you're the son of somebody to the top of the department. You know, it's not based on efficiency. the school system there is ranked as one of the worst in Europe for its ability to educate pupils, and yet they employ they did employ 4 times as many teachers as the best, which was Finland. 4 times as many teachers per pupil, that is. I mean, it's very, very inefficient. And in fact, Greek parents would take it for granted that you simply had to hire a tutor, usually these same teachers, to actually teach your children out of school, simply because there was no hope of them getting an education in school. The government in Greece was allowing early retirement to anybody in an arduous profession, which is fair enough. I mean, in this country you might think coal miners maybe should retire early because it's a really tough, dangerous job. Okay, fair enough. But in Greece, arduous professions includes hairdressers, waitresses, things of that sort, musicians. 600 different professions have managed to get themselves classified as arduous, and they can retire at age 50 or 55 on a generous pension, or they could. In Greece, at the time, and I guess it's the same now, bribery was basically necessary to get anything done from any public sector department, even medical treatment. You were expected to bribe your doctors. Taxes. Yes, the Greeks don't like to pay taxes. Well, nobody likes to pay taxes, but in Greece they don't even bother to collect taxes in election years, right? Or at least up until recently. The Greeks are finding this so hard. I mean, oh dear, we might have to pay some tax now. How arduous is that? How much austerity is that we might have to pay some taxes? But back then, and probably to a large extent now, almost all self-employed people underdeclared their income. The tax-free threshold there was about €12,000 a year. So even people like doctors getting massive amounts of money, hundreds of thousands, were declaring their actual income as 12k or less. It's just insane, basically. So the government is not getting any real revenue, it has to borrow. Unions are strong and demanding high wages which are not justified, like the rail workers which I mentioned on their 65k a year. The National Rail Company's revenues were about €100 million a year. Okay, but the wage bill alone was €400 million. And there are other expenses of 300 million just to run the network, right? So ridiculous. Absolutely no relation between the costs and the money coming in, or going out, really. Now, so basically the Greek system was utterly corrupt. Not just the government, not just the public sector, the entire Greek population, almost. I mean, it's difficult because if you're an honest person in such a country, surrounded by people who are basically out for themselves and nobody else, you're going to get ripped off right, left and centre if you insist on being honest. You're going to get demoted in your job because you'll be upsetting other people by pointing out fraud. There's not much you can do, really. The Greeks need a wake-up call, I think. I mean, this crisis is the alarm bell ringing, but I don't think they've really got it. Okay, they voted no to austerity the other day. But the alternative would appear to be to leave the euro. Now, the Prime Minister, what's his name, Alexis Tsipras or something, has in fact agreed to stronger austerity than the Greeks voted no to just the other day. So much for democracy. But has he done the right thing? Should they have more austerity? Well, it seems to me that in life, the universe, if you like, or life penalises or causes unhappiness. Right. through three things. One is bad luck. If you're born with a bad hand of cards, that's tough luck. The second thing is immorality. That causes unhappiness because, for instance, civilization can only work if people can trust each other, to a reasonable degree anyway. If people are dishonest, they may make a short-term gain, but they make a long-term loss because it brings down the profitability and the level of civilization of the whole society gradually, as the Greeks are finding out. And the third thing it penalises is stupidity. In fact, stupidity gets penalised first, before immorality, frankly. But immorality and stupidity are both forms of the same thing, ignorance. People don't realise what is in their long-term best interest, because if they really understood it, they would not be so dishonest. There's always a temptation for people to be dishonest to some degree, but this ripping off the EU, which is what they consciously have done, I think, is exactly the sort of immorality that leads to bad consequences for the immoral persons. So I think it's perfectly reasonable, in fact it's mild medicine for them to suffer austerity, to get their books back into balance, to start running their public services actually properly, to have their wages cut and have their taxes increased. This is just the natural outcome of their bad behaviour. This is inevitable. The alternative, there is a tougher medicine they can have, which is to leave the euro. Were they to leave the euro, they could print their own money, the drachma or whatever they want, and you could be pretty sure in 2 or 3 years' time they would be suffering from severe hyperinflation, because they would be printing money like no tomorrow to pay for things that they can't afford. So the value of their currency would go down and down and down, prices would go up and up and up and up. They would be like Germany between the wars, or Zimbabwe just a couple of years ago, where the currency is so poor that it costs you like £1 million for a cup of tea or something, right? And the price goes up 3 times an hour. That is the real tough alternative. If they want that, they can have it, because really the only way, I think, for them to get out of their situation is to change their behaviour. They've voted for another bailout, or rather they voted really for no more austerity. They voted for their debts to be forgiven. Well, that's not going to happen. Forgiving their debts, I think, without a change in their behaviour will simply result in the situation coming back again anyway. It won't be a cure. Their economy might grow, but it'll be corrupt and crooked, and it won't work in the long run. Making them pay back their debts and suffer for their bad behaviour is probably, to be honest, is justice, and it's the mild medicine. If they really want to go the whole hog and leave the euro, then they will suffer the tough medicine. Germany still remembers what hyperinflation was like, and that was nearly a century ago, and they are terrified of it. They don't want that to come back. And that's why they're being so strict with the Greeks. But the Greeks haven't learned the lesson yet. And until they do, they will not fix their economy. Well, I guess that's my take on it. Add your comments below if you like, and if you like my vlog, maybe subscribe. Okay, bye.